Imagine waking up in a quiet Texas town and finding law enforcement swarming a massive property. Sirens echo down a long rural road, deputies rush past a towering gate marked Rancho Monte Carlo, and in the middle of it all, a pond holds the center of a mystery so disturbing it defies belief. Authorities say a mother is at the center of it. A mother who may have led her 3 children to the water after allegedly giving them Nyquil. By the time deputies arrived, the children had been pulled from the pond, unresponsive. One of them, just 11 years old, lay on the ground as a deputy fought to bring her back to life. The mother herself was found floating, unconscious, her heartbeat faint, her breathing gone. The father's voice was the one that first reached 911. His words painted a chaotic scene. His children by the water, his wife with them, and something terribly wrong. Minutes later, deputies, firefighters, and medics descended on the property. What they uncovered has left the entire community stunned. Tonight, we're pulling apart every detail of this shocking case in Liberty County, Texas. What pushed a family to the edge of tragedy? Was this a desperate act, an accident, or something darker that no one saw coming? The questions are heavy, the facts are scarce, and the answers may lie only with the surviving children. Stay with us because the twists in this case will leave you questioning everything you think you know.
Welcome to the Case File. Here, every crime has a story, every mystery leaves a trail, and every detail could be the difference between truth and deception. From assassinations that shook the nation, to manhunts that gripped entire cities, we uncover the raw, unfiltered events behind the headlines. These are not just stories. They are lives, choices, and consequences. The files are open, the cases are real, and the truth is waiting to be found. This is the Case File. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because the next case might be the one that changes everything.
It was just before sunrise in Liberty County, Texas. A place where life usually moves slow, where wide open fields stretch for miles and the sound of trucks on gravel roads marked the start of another ordinary day. But this morning was different. At 7 a.m., the calm was broken by an emergency call that would bring deputies, firefighters, and medics racing down a long, secluded driveway. The property was enormous, tucked away behind a heavy gate marked Rancho Monte Carlo. Beyond it stood a sprawling house and, in the back, a pond that had suddenly become the center of a nightmare. The 911 dispatcher relayed the father's frantic voice. He said his children were in the water. His wife was with them. Something was terribly wrong. By the time the first deputy arrived, chaos had already unfolded by the pond's edge. On the ground, an 11-year-old girl lay unconscious. A deputy knelt beside her, desperately working to keep her alive until paramedics arrived. She stirred faintly, clinging to life, but her condition was critical. Just feet away, the 6-year-old boy, soaked and shivering, sat restless, unable to grasp what had just happened. Their 15-year-old sister stood nearby, exhausted, terrified, and barely able to speak. And then there was the mother. Deputies found her floating in the pond, her body motionless. When they pulled her from the water, she had a faint heartbeat but no breath. She was unresponsive, silent, and slipping further away. The scene looked like something no family should ever endure. Children pulled from the water, a mother unconscious, and law enforcement scrambling to piece together what had just happened. For neighbors living miles away, the sight of flashing lights cutting through the morning fog left them with only questions. What could possibly explain this? As the paramedics worked, the tension deepened. Multiple bottles of Nyquil were discovered on the property. Dispatch radio chatter captured the fear in real time. You're going to have 4 kids, all Nyquil, multiple bottles on scene. Was this an accident? A desperate attempt by a mother to save her children from something unseen? Or had she tried to do the unthinkable, to harm the very one she brought into this world? By the time helicopters and ambulances rushed the family to Houston hospitals, 2 lives hung in the balance, the mother's and her 11-year-old daughter's. And as deputies secured the property, the unanswered questions only grew louder. What happened at this pond in the quiet town of Dayton, Texas, was no ordinary call for help. It was the beginning of a case that would leave even seasoned investigators stunned. The call for help came from inside the house. It was the father's voice that broke the early morning silence, carrying a mix of fear and confusion. He told dispatchers his wife and children were at the pond. He said he heard commotion, maybe yelling, and when he rushed outside he saw what no parent ever expects to see, his children struggling by the water. According to investigators, the father's 911 call set the chain of response in motion. Within minutes, deputies were racing to the property, unsure of what they were about to face. The urgency in his words painted a picture of danger, but the details didn't yet make sense. When deputies arrived, they noticed something important. the children were already out of the water. Wet, shaking but alive. The father himself was soaked, evidence that he had entered the pond. They believe he may have been the one to pull at least some of the children from the water before help arrived. But the mother, she was still in the pond, unconscious, unresponsive. This left investigators with an immediate puzzle. If the father had acted quickly enough to call for help and rescue the children, why hadn't he pulled the mother out too? Was it simply a matter of timing, or was there something more? The pond itself sat about 75 to 100 feet from the house, on the far side of the property. According to deputies, the screams came from the opposite end of the pond, making it a longer distance to cover. The father reportedly drove his vehicle closer in order to reach the water faster. But even so, investigators quietly noted that the timeline felt unclear. How much time had truly passed between the first screams and the rescue? Law enforcement made it clear early on, they weren't ruling anything out. The father was cooperative, riding with deputies to give a statement. He answered questions, but investigators said they would still need to test his story against physical evidence, witness interviews, and the children's own accounts once they were stable enough to talk. Behind the calm of his cooperation lingered a reality. In cases like this, both parents fall under scrutiny until the facts tell a different story. His call for help might have saved lives. Or it could have been the first step in shaping how this tragedy would be explained. As deputies searched the home and grounds, the father's role remained both central and uncertain. Was he the desperate parent trying to protect his children from danger? Or a man holding back pieces of a much darker truth? As the family was rushed to Houston hospitals, deputies turned their attention back to the sprawling property. The house sat quiet behind its tall gate, but inside, investigators were looking for anything that could explain what happened at the pond. What they found immediately raised eyebrows. Multiple bottles of Nyquil were scattered around the home. Broadcast radio traffic captured those first moments. "You're going to have 4 kids, all Nyquil, multiple bottles on scene." The chilling phrase suggested more than just an accident. It hinted at planning, a decision made before anyone entered the water. The Liberty County Sheriff's Office held its first briefing outside the property. Deputies explained what they knew so far. 3 children, a 15-year-old girl, an 11-year-old girl, and a 6-year-old boy. The youngest 2 had been pulled from the pond barely conscious. The mother, also found in the water, was in critical condition. At the hospital, the updates painted a grim picture. The 11-year-old girl clung to life in intensive care. Doctors worked relentlessly, but her condition was described as critical. The 6-year-old boy, restless and energetic despite the trauma, was being kept calm under hospital supervision. The oldest, the 15-year-old, was exhausted but stable, able to talk softly through tears. And then there was the mother. Hospital staff confirmed she had a heartbeat but remained unresponsive, unable to breathe on her own. She too was listed in critical condition. Deputies refused to speculate, but the evidence pointed toward more than a tragic mishap. Why Nyquil? Why the pond? And why now? They searched the home for clues, medicine bottles, possible alcohol, anything that could link back to the morning's events. At the same time, investigators began building a timeline. When did the mother lead the children outside? How long were they near the pond before the father emerged? And what did the children themselves see and understand before the chaos unfolded? The sheriff's office made one thing clear: this was now a major investigation. The Texas Rangers had been called in, bringing with them more resources and experience. Every bottle, every footprint, every fragment of evidence from that house and pond would be critical. Yet despite the intense activity, the motive remained a mystery. Was this a desperate mother in crisis? Or was there another factor, hidden struggles, unspoken conflict, that pushed the family to this breaking point? As the property was sealed and deputies guarded its perimeter, one fact was undeniable. Whatever happened here was no ordinary family emergency. This was the start of a case that would grip not just Liberty County, but the entire state. As the hours passed, deputies pieced together fragments of the family's history. What emerged only deepened the mystery. The property itself was striking. A large home built in 2017 on an expansive plot of land, hidden behind a gated entrance marked Rancho Monte Carlo. Neighbors told reporters the family mostly kept to themselves. They rarely saw the children, and no one could recall them playing outside or attending local schools. Investigators confirmed a troubling detail: the children had not been enrolled in school for some time. Whether they were homeschooled or simply kept away from classrooms, no records could explain the absence. For authorities, it raised unsettling questions. Were the children isolated? And if so, why? Then came another revelation. Deputies admitted they had responded to this home before. Records suggested a possible assault call in the past, though no clear details were provided. The sheriff's office offered no explanation about who was involved or how serious the incident had been. But the admission cast a shadow over the family's quiet image. Attention also turned to the father. Though he was cooperative, investigators struggled to confirm basic details about his life. He reportedly sold cars, but deputies had found nothing concrete to verify his work or financial situation. The contrast was stark: a massive property, a newly built house, but no clear picture of how the family sustained it all. Neighbors described the household as private, even secretive. With the long driveway and heavy gate, it was easy for them to remain unseen. But behind those walls, something had clearly been wrong long before deputies arrived at the pond. For investigators, these unanswered questions were critical. Why weren't the children in school? Why had deputies been called there before? And why was it so difficult to confirm even simple facts about the parents' lives? Each detail added weight to the theory that what happened by the pond was not random. It was part of a much larger, hidden story, one that was only beginning to come to light. As investigators combed through the evidence, one discovery kept surfacing: Nyquil. Multiple bottles were found scattered around the property, some nearly empty. It was enough to make deputies question whether the children had been drugged before being led to the water. Radio chatter revealed the early suspicion: 4 kids, all Nyquil, multiple bottles on scene. At first, some believed the mother might have jumped into the pond to save the children. But as the evidence stacked up, that explanation became harder to accept. Why so much medication? Why at the same time as the drowning attempt? The sheriff's office admitted they were looking closely at whether the children had been poisoned. Toxicology tests would take time, but investigators already suspected the Nyquil was no accident. The father's 911 call painted him as the one who discovered the chaos. He claimed he heard yelling, rushed outside, and tried to save his children. Deputies confirmed he was wet, as were the kids, suggesting he entered the pond. But the mother remained in the water when deputies arrived. That detail raised doubts. Had he really pulled the children out first, or was there more to the story? For law enforcement, the case wasn't simple. Both parents were now under the microscope. The sheriff explained it clearly: if all the evidence points toward mom, then we'll move in that direction. If it points toward dad or both, we'll follow that. The children, meanwhile, held answers investigators desperately needed. The 15-year-old, stable but exhausted, would undergo a forensic interview. The 6-year-old boy would also be questioned carefully. Their testimony could be the key to unraveling who did what that morning. But until then, the focus remained on the mother. Why would she try to harm her own children? Was it mental illness? Financial stress? Or a motive yet to surface? Investigators admitted they had no history of mental health issues on record for either parent. That only made the case more puzzling. The suspicion deepened with every hour. A mother unconscious in the water. Nyquil bottles scattered in the home. Children barely saved from drowning. And a father whose role was still not fully clear. The truth was there, somewhere between what the parents said, what the children remembered, and what the evidence revealed. The challenge was fitting it together before it slipped away. News of the pond incident spread quickly through the quiet neighborhood. But unlike other cases where neighbors often rushed to speak, here the silence was almost overwhelming. Residents either refused to comment or said little more than they didn't know the family well. Some were visibly shaken but avoided cameras. It was as if no one wanted to be connected to the unfolding tragedy. Law enforcement, on the other hand, could not remain quiet. Deputies who responded first described the call as one of the hardest they had ever faced. 4 children and their mother pulled from a pond. It was a scene that left even seasoned officers struggling to keep their composure. The sheriff later admitted that some deputies were deeply affected, and counseling was being arranged for those who needed it. The case also demanded reinforcement. The Texas Rangers, known for stepping in during complex or emotionally charged cases, were called to assist. Their role was to ensure nothing was missed. Every bottle, every phone call, every witness statement would be reviewed under their expertise. As the Rangers joined, the sheriff's office reminded the public that the case was still wide open. They could not and would not say whether the mother acted alone, whether the father had a role, or if there was another explanation altogether. What they stressed, however, was that this was not a simple accident. Too many details didn't line up. The community's unease deepened. Parents in the area began holding their children closer. Schools circulated quiet reminders about safety, and whispers filled local churches. A once ordinary pond in a rural neighborhood had now become the center of a mystery everyone wanted solved. For investigators, the emotional weight of the case was matched only by the pressure to deliver answers. With the Texas Rangers now on board, the search for truth had escalated. But even with added manpower, one fact remained: the key voices in this story were still the children. And until they spoke, suspicion and speculation would continue to hang over the entire case. Weeks passed, yet the investigation offered no clear conclusion. Toxicology reports were still pending, interviews with the children were handled carefully, and every piece of evidence had to be weighed before authorities could move forward. For the public, frustration grew. How could something so shocking remain unsolved? But investigators insisted patience was necessary. In cases involving children, rushing could destroy the very evidence needed for justice. The sheriff's office repeated their stance. Both parents were under investigation. No one was ruled out. If the evidence showed the mother was responsible, charges would follow. If it pointed to the father or to both, they would act. Until then, silence. Court records showed no prior arrests for either parent. No history of mental illness. No major family disputes that neighbors could recall. On paper, the family was ordinary. Yet what happened that morning at the pond was anything but ordinary. The children's voices were central. The 15-year-old girl was stable enough to speak, though authorities shielded her identity. The 6-year-old boy was also expected to provide testimony. Their accounts, investigators believed, could either confirm the father's 911 call or contradict it. The mother's condition remained unclear. Some reports suggested she was hospitalized for evaluation, while others noted she had not been formally charged. The ambiguity only fueled speculation. Was she recovering under watch? Or being shielded until tests returned? In the absence of hard answers, the community clung to rumors. Some said the children had been drugged. Others believed the father staged his call. Still others insisted the mother snapped under hidden stress. But until investigators spoke, those were only theories. The sheriff summed it up plainly: "We're not ready to say this is exactly what happened. We'll wait until the facts are clear." And so, the case lingered. A family fractured. A neighborhood shaken. A pond that once sat unnoticed now carrying the weight of suspicion. The answers were coming, but slowly, and everyone was left waiting. The story of the pond remains unfinished, yet it has already carved itself into the memory of everyone who followed it. For children pulled from the water, their mother found alongside them, their father making the desperate 911 call. Bottles of Nyquil scattered through the home. Deputies and rangers circling every clue, every statement, every timeline. For investigators, the case is more than evidence on a table. It is the unanswered question of motive. Why would a mother, with no history of illness or violence, lead her children into danger? Why would a father, who claimed to save them, be viewed with suspicion? And what do the children, the only true witnesses, remember about those terrifying minutes? The answers will come through science and testimony, toxicology reports, forensic interviews, and a methodical piecing together of the morning's chaos. But the waiting leaves a shadow over the community. A pond that once reflected calm skies now mirrors only tragedy. For the sheriff's office and the Texas Rangers, the case is a test of patience and precision. Every choice must honor the children who survived, and the truth that still hides beneath the surface. And so, the story closes, not with justice delivered but with justice delayed. The facts are still forming. The voices are still waiting to be heard. But one truth is clear: behind every headline is a family, behind every case a community, and behind every mystery, a question that demands an answer. As viewers, we are left to wonder, when the full truth emerges, will it confirm what we fear or reveal something no one saw coming? Thank you for watching till the very end. Stories like this remind us how fragile life can be, and how a single morning can change everything. If you want to follow more real cases and untold stories, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe so you never miss the next case file. Until then, stay safe, and stay curious.